Putin is trying to revive the Soviet Union, according to Moldova's government, during the first round of voting in the presidential election. Putin planned a scheme to bribe 300,000 citizens to vote for the pro-Russian party.
Russia, that's over 38 million euros channeled through Russian banks towards Moldova, with up to 300,000 votes being bought ahead of the referendum and ahead of the first round of presidential elections, according to Moldovan authorities.
Putin is also being accused of using separatist regions like Transnistria and Gagauzia as bases of operation, as well as to lobby money into the pro-Russia government in Moldova. Was this mission successful? And what will happen if Moldova does not join the EU? On the 20th of October, 2024, Moldova held the first round of its presidential election, alongside the referendum on the country's European integration. On one hand was Maia Sandu, leader of the pro-European party, and on the other side was Alexander Stoianoglo, former chief prosecutor and leader of the pro-Russian party, both contending for the citizens of Moldova's votes. But before these votes were cast, there were many concerns about Putin's involvement. A Moldovan government official, who asked to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, claimed that there was a possibility of the pro-Russian government making false bomb threats to disrupt voting in buildings where polling stations were located. After 70% of the ballots had been counted, anti-Europe integration gained a massive 55.3%, while the pro-EU gained 44.6%. However, just when they thought they had lost to Russia, the votes in the diaspora were counted, and pro-EU integration gained 50.35%. Put simply, Sandu won 42%, while her main rival, Alexandru Stoianoglo, 26% in the first round.
In easy terms, Maia Sandu with so far 2% means freedom, and Stoianoglo with 26% means Putin. Stoianoglo positions himself somewhere in between East and West, whatever he thinks it means, with rhetoric that contrasts sharply with Sandu's policies.
But in the aftermath, Moldova accused Russia of trying to control the election by buying votes, allegations Russia continuously denied. Putin has been trying to penetrate the Moldovan government, and one tactic he has been using is deploying breakaway states from Moldova to do his bidding. A prime example is the case of Gagauzia governor, Evgenia Gutul, who has now been sanctioned by the United States. Evgenia Gutul is a close ally of Putin, facing criminal allegations of channeling funds from Russia to finance the now banned Shore Party, set up by Ian Shore, an exiled pro-Russian businessman convicted of fraud in Moldova.
The protesters are loud and clear outside the court in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova. They came to support her, Evgenia Gutul, the governor of Gagauzia, an autonomous region within Moldova. She is accused of illegal party financing. The state prosecutor claims she personally transported money from Russia to Moldova for a Kremlin-backed party.
But the governor stated that the accusations were false and claims she is only being attacked for having a different opinion.
I am on trial because I am the governor of Gagauzia. Today we're being punished and tried for having a different opinion, for wanting peace. We want to be friends with the Russian Federation and with other countries.
However, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets has seized all assets Gutul had in the United States and prohibited any American from doing business with her. But despite these sanctions, Gutul remains convinced in her stance that Moldova should move towards a Russian alliance rather than European. Gutul has grown so close to Moscow that in March she met Putin alongside other high Russian officials.
Evgenia Gutul is Russia's ally in Moldova. She regularly travels to Moscow, even meets with Vladimir Putin.
But Russia has offered to support the people of Gagauzia financially. However, the region is split on the issue. Some appreciate the financial support, while others think it does more damage than good.
But others warn that conflict with the central government is costing Gagauzia more than the help is worth.
The conflict reaches each of us who live in Gagauzia, because sadly our autonomy is now in isolation, diplomatically and economically. Our economic indicators are deplorable, investments are decreasing, budget revenues are decreasing, and some companies have left the autonomy.
But the majority of Gagauzia citizens are pro-Russian. This is likely due to the fact that everyone in the region speaks Russian. But Gagauzia is not the only breakaway region that Putin has been trying to use against Moldova.
Russian troops are already in Moldova, in the separatist Transnistria in the east of the country.
Transnistria is crucial for Putin if he plans to invade Moldova, and to understand why that is, here's a quick dive into the Soviet Union's history with Moldova. After World War I, Moldova was split in half. The western part of Moldova, known as Bessarabia, joined Romania, while the eastern part remained within Soviet borders, but the Soviet had a dream of all Moldova united under the Soviet flag. So in 1924, the Soviet Union founded the Moldavian Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, MASSR, on the eastern bank of the Dniester River. The region now known today as Transnistria was strategically created by the Soviets to serve as a foothold for when they claimed Bessarabia. These dreams would, however, come to reality when World War II began. In 1940, the Soviet Union took control of Bessarabia from Romania and united it with MASSR. Under the Soviets' leadership, Transnistria underwent significant changes that still reflect in the region to this day. The region saw rapid industrial development, which attracted many Russian and Ukrainian settlers. And as the years went by, Transnistria's population grew aligned with Russian-speaking communities. But as the Soviet Union began to dissolve in the late 1980s, Moldova soon began to push for its independence. Pay close attention, because this is where the problem began. In 1989, Moldovan, which sounded exactly as Romanian, was made the official language by a law. This sparked concerns among Transnistria's Russian-speaking population, who feared they might be ousted within a potentially independent Moldova. So out of this concern, the leaders of Transnistrian pushed for regional autonomy, and in 1990, Transnistria declared itself the Pridnestrovian Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic, PMSSR, but they were not recognized internationally. And by the time Moldova declared its independence, Transnistria refused to identify as part of Moldova, which resulted in a tension that later escalated to a full-out war in 1992. In March 1992, the war began and lasted several months. However, one important detail that reflects Transnistria's stance with Russia today is the fact that Russian forces backed them during the conflict.
Paramilitary forces took over public buildings, aided by Cossack fighters and Russian troops. They fought the Moldovans in a series of battles. Hundreds died. The fighting finished as what's known as a frozen conflict. Neither side really won, neither side really lost, with the Russians enforcing an uneasy ceasefire.
5 months later, after hundreds of casualties, a ceasefire was brokered by Russia, and a demilitarized security zone was established along the Dniester River. This is how Transnistria was able to gain its freedom from Moldova, although to this day, it is not internationally recognized and remains legally part of Moldova. But this is how Transnistria's loyalty to Russia was born, and to this day, Russia uses Transnistria as a base operation in that region under the guise of peacekeeping. Transnistria's loyalty is also bound to the fact that the state heavily relies on Russia for support, both financial aid and energy supplies.
Since then, and this is why it's so important, the territory has retained close ties to Russia and is heavily dependent on Moscow's support. A towering statue of Vladimir Lenin stands in the middle of the main square in its capital city, Tiraspol. It's home to over 1,000 Russian troops, and its economy is reliant on Russian subsidies.
With Transnistria now at the center of the conflict, there are concerns that Russia might use the country as a base for its soldiers when they decide to invade Moldova. And this is not just a speculation. Russia recently revealed their aim in the Phase 2 attack on Ukraine, and Transnistria seems to be the main goal.
According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, its 4 main objectives in the next phase are to take over the Donbass in Ukraine's far east, create a land corridor from there to Crimea, blockade Ukraine's Black Sea ports like Odessa, and then, it says, to control southern Ukraine, creating an exit to Transnistria.
And to top it off, Russia recently termed Moldova as the next Ukraine. After warning the country to avoid Western influence, and since Moldova has openly condemned Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the fate of the country is heavily reliant on a certain union. On the 3rd of November, 2024, the second round of the elections was held in Moldova, and there was a lot of tension in the pro-European camp, as a loss now would mean a complete takeover of Moldova by Putin. However, when the results were finally announced, pro-Western candidate Maia Sandu was declared the winner. This marked a massive breakthrough for the country, as Moldova's election is the first election Putin has unsuccessfully tampered with.
It has been a big night for one of Europe's poorest countries, Moldova. Their pro-EU president has claimed a second term after a tense election runoff seen as a choice between Europe and Russia. Official figures give Maia Sandu an unassailable lead, with nearly all the votes counted.
According to the Central Electoral Commission, Maia won with nearly 99% of the votes, a clear contrast to the previous 55% she won in the first half. And during her speech, President Maia addressed the topic of external forces trying to alter the elections and congratulated the people for making the right choice.
Moldova has been under an unprecedented attack. Dirty money, illegal vote buying, the interference in electoral processes by hostile forces from outside the country and by criminal groups, lies sowing hatred and fear within our society. Our people have united, and freedom and the citizens have won. Peace and hope for a better life have prevailed.
While this is an amazing victory and a big blow in Putin's face, Moldova still has one main issue that needs to be resolved, and that's joining the EU as quickly as possible. Technically, Moldova has no Western support, and with the country so close to Ukraine, Putin might decide to take the frustration of losing the election out on the country. He may launch a full invasion. The second problem is the fact that Russia supplies Moldova energy and gas, and now that the election has not gone in Putin's favor, he might just cut that supply. So right now, the only hope Moldova has is for their EU membership to be verified. If this happens, they would have an alternative. Brussels has promised to supply the country's energy as soon as they become EU members. Putin's involvement in Moldova's elections may have turned out unsuccessful, but there's another country that was unable to stop Putin from manipulating their elections. So check out this deep dive, where I'll show you how Georgia erupts in civil unrest over EU vote.